It's been over 9 months since the Ukraine war began. There is death, destruction, carnage, and the fear of what next. And the sum of all fears is the use of a nuclear weapon, something the world is dreading. The rhetoric has been rising and the caution against any use of weapons of mass destruction. Kiev is wary and has been urging world leaders to pressure Moscow against unleashing nukes. And in such an uneasy atmosphere, how do you think Ukraine would react if it finds nuclear-capable missiles heading towards its territory? The spectre of an incoming nuclear-capable missile zooming on its predetermined target. Well, now there is a rather curious development. Ukraine says Russian forces are now firing empty missiles which are nuclear-capable. Yes, you heard that right. Kiev says it has found fragments of Russian-fired nuclear-capable missiles with dud warheads in West Ukraine. Ukraine's military feels that their apparent purpose is to distract air defenses by firing these dud nuclear-capable missiles. These are images of the parts of Kh-55 cruise missiles shared by Ukrainian defense forces. The Kh-55 was designed by the Soviet Union in the 1970s for use on strategic targets. It's primarily intended to carry nuclear warheads and to be launched from bomber aircraft. Tests on the fragment did not show abnormal levels of radioactivity, but even without a warhead, these missiles cause damage.
Саме даний фрагмент був відсіку бойової частини. Тобто це замінник термоядерного рельованого заряду, який використовується в ракетах Х-55. В принципі, вони для цього і були розроблені.
So why is Russia doing this? Earlier, intelligence reports suggested that Moscow was running low on weapon supplies. Remember, over the past 9 months, Russia has been relentlessly firing a barrage of missiles on Ukrainian targets. And Kiev says Russia's weapon supply is running lower and lower by the day. And to replenish its ballistic missile stocks, Russia is turning to Iran and North Korea. Both Tehran and Pyongyang have refuted these reports. Russia's missile stockpile is a closely guarded secret. Some experts say Russia is repurposing its munitions because they are running low on more precision missiles. Russia's defense minister said on Wednesday that the armed forces should use new advanced weapon systems in the conflict in Ukraine. Sergei Shoigu, who is one of President Vladimir Putin's closest allies, did not specify which advanced weapons should be used. President Putin has said Russia will defend its territory with all available means, including its nuclear weapons, if attacked. Russian officials, however, say that the West has repeatedly misinterpreted the Kremlin's statements and it has no intentions of using nukes in Ukraine. But Kiev and the West are not convinced. For more on this story, we are now joined by Elizabeth Bro, a senior fellow from the American Enterprise Institute. Thanks very much for speaking to WION. How would you react to these claims that are being made by Ukraine that Russia is using dud nuclear-capable missiles that are now heading towards that country? Is this something that should cause alarm?
Well, it is a concerning development. I don't think the Ukrainians would have made such a claim if they couldn't back it up. So we've got to take it at face value that that's what's happening. And it's not surprising that it's happening because, as we have seen in the past few weeks, Russia has intensified the part of its warfare that is designed to frighten the civilian population of Ukraine. So because it's not making very much progress on the battlefield, it has clearly, the leadership has clearly decided that the way to make progress in this war is to frighten ordinary Ukrainians and essentially make them so concerned about what might happen to their country that they pressure their own country's leadership to engage in peace talks. So if you present to the Ukrainian population the specter of nuclear war, and I mean, that's something that will frighten everybody, then you will Iranians, and so it's essentially the Russians are making turning lemonade into lemons into lemonade. That's what I wanted to say by using its military disadvantage to frighten the Ukrainian population. And by the way, its military disadvantage, which also includes, as you said, a lack of ammunition.
Right. Now, is the purpose to fuse Ukraine's defense forces, or could it be some other ploy? That is perhaps another question that will be asked. But what is your assessment of Russia's arsenal? NATO has said Moscow has depleted much of its precision-guided ammunition. And do you believe there is a real possibility of a nuclear weapon being used by Russia?
Russia is very clearly running low on certain kinds of ammunition, and eventually it will run low on the hardware itself, the equipment itself. But ammunition is what you need in order for your weapons to fire. Otherwise, they are pointless, useless, and so that is an urgent need now for Russia. And indeed, Ukraine is also running low on ammunition, which is why its friends are trying to help it get more supplies of ammunition. But Russia doesn't have that many friends, so it's facing a bigger risk of running very low on ammunition. So it's using the strategy of frightening the Ukrainian population with, for example, attacks on, as we have seen, civilian infrastructure. But the threat of a nuclear weapon strike is really the most powerful weapon you can use, a powerful threat you can use against any country, any civilian population. And there are two things to be said about the risk of a nuclear strike. It's extremely unlikely that Russia will use a nuclear weapon against a Ukrainian city, simply because then other nuclear weapon states would have to respond. That's what the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is about. It gives non-nuclear weapon states reassurance that official nuclear weapon states will come to their aid in case they are attacked with nuclear weapons. But the other thing is, what if Russia were to use a nuclear weapon against, just detonate it in a non-populated area, just killing maybe a few people? What if we were to detonate a nuclear weapon in the Black Sea? Would that be enough for NATO and other countries to retaliate against Russia? And that is really the dilemma that Ukraine and its Western friends face with regards to nuclear weapons. Everybody knows that if Russia were to kill 10,000, 20,000 Ukrainians with a nuclear weapon, then they would have to respond. But what if it's just 10 people, 20 people? What if it's nobody in a totally deserted area, or, for example, in the Black Sea?
All right, Elizabeth Braw, thanks very much for sharing your perspective on that important story with WION.